Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the national finals of TCS Ion Intelligem 2021. Before we progress to the contest itself, can I request and welcome Mr. Mahadevan from TCS Ion to set the ball rolling.
Thank you. A big hello to everyone. It is a tremendous pleasure that I welcome you all to the grand finale of the TCS Ion Intelligem 2021. It just looks like yesterday, but we are at the final stages of the third edition of this contest. When we started, we had two goals in mind. One, how do we enable the skills and competencies young learners of today need? What everyone talks about the 21st century skills. And two, how do we work with the school system to really see how these can be integrated as part of everyday learning? First, let me congratulate all the finalists who are here. You all have reached, after 3 rounds, competing with the thousands across the country, the best who put their foot forward, but not necessarily in the bestest of the circumstances, I believe. Given the challenges in terms of the pandemic, in terms of the way we had to reimagine the way we study, the way we work. In fact, we had to reimagine the contest. We reimagined every single aspect of this contest to ensure that you all stay home, stay safe, and still be part of the 21st century skills domain. When we started the reimagination, we wanted to ensure that we have a model which is ready to go global. Reimagining every aspect of this contest helped us come to a situation today where you might not be competing with just the best in the country, but best around the globe very soon, maybe in the very next year. All of this would not have been possible without the active participation and enthusiastic support from schools and students. We are happy to tell you that schools from 180 plus cities and towns of the country, spread over 27 states, participated. A big thank you to each and every one of you who took the initiative to encourage your young learners to be ready for the future. Today, we have in front of us 50 of the young gems who are going to compete for the final stage of this, for the national crown of TCS Ion Intelligem. Till now, I hope you all had a very good experience, and hopefully the last stage is going to be yours. So all the best. Put your best foot forward and ensure that you are at your articulate best, creative best, and also empathetic best. Best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, Maha.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to once again welcome you to the grand finale of the third edition of TCS Ion Intelligem, an innovative national contest to unearth the gems of tomorrow. We are gathered here for the finale of Communication Skills category, senior level competition, brought to you by TCS Ion in partnership with STEP from the Hindu Group. Let me begin by introducing our most esteemed panel of jury for the day. Miss Vijaya Srinivas is currently the head of teaching and training at STEP from the Hindu Group, where she oversees all training, learning, and testing initiatives. Vijaya previously worked with reputed names like British Council, and in her last role, she led on assessment services for South Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Russia with Cambridge English Language Assessment, which is a part of the University of Cambridge. She has a master's in training and development from the University of New England and has also authored 4 children's books and written articles for general interest magazines and English language publications. Miss Nitya Lohit is a training manager at the Hindu STEP, where she manages all the training programs. She designs and develops material for face-to-face training across various levels, develops online resources for teacher development, and has conducted teacher training workshops. She also engages with learners through webinars, one-to-one coaching, and in large classrooms. Previously, she worked with Teach for India as a full-time teacher to children in an under-resourced school for 2 years. Through this experience of teaching in classrooms and working with education stakeholders like students, principals, and parents, she has an understanding of the grassroots realities of India's education system. Prior to this, she also has over 4 years of experience as a software engineer. She holds a degree in electronics and communication engineering from Anna University. Ms. Shailaja Ramesh is a content manager at STEP, an avid reader. Her passion for English led her on a path which took her all the way after graduating with a master's degree at the Etherage College for Women to the National University of Singapore, where she pursued a doctoral degree in English literature. Her stint in Singapore also opened up the world of education and pedagogy for her. Having worked at Cambridge Assessment English, she brings a rich insight into the needs of English learners in India. And now, for our most important guests, our finalists, Siddharth Kumar Gopal from St. Thomas Residential School, Prateek M from PSBB KK Nagar, Chennai, Pranav Gautam from PSBB T Nagar, Chennai, Vedant Santosh Sinde from Presidency School, RT Nagar, Bangalore, Jeff Kevin Arun from Manchester International School, Coimbatore, and Naina Bagchi from Sun City School, Gurgaon. They have successfully made it to the grand finale after proving their mettle in 3 challenging rounds. Please put your hands together to wish them luck for the grand finale. It's finally time to begin. Get ready for part 1 vlog. Participants were asked to create an innovative 1-minute introductory video, which they sent in earlier. Let's have a look at our first candidate's vlog. Siddharth Kumar Gopal from St. Thomas Residential School.
The year was 2008. The stock markets had fallen worldwide and the Beijing Olympics had just gotten over. On a cool, breezy night in September, in the whole of Kerala awaited Lord Mahabali, the mythical king who visits his subject once a year on Thiruvonam Day, Kerala's harvest festival. A child announced his arrival to the world with a determined cry. That baby, Siddharth Kumar Gopal, grew up in the scenic coastal town of Thiruvananthapuram, curious and inquisitive about the world around him. He took his baby steps into the world of knowledge through books and friendships in his favorite place, St. Thomas Residential School. Today, he stands before you, an avid reader and a passionate debater, a quizzing enthusiast with a scientific temper, a traveler with a love of good food and great conversations. And that's me.
That was a lovely video, Siddharth. Thank you for making us feel like you were actually talking about someone else when you were talking about yourself.
Thank you.
I'm sure your curiosity to learn different things is going to take you places. Up next, we have our second candidate, Prateek from PSBB Senior Secondary School, KK Nagar, Chennai.
Namaste. Today I would like to talk about a 12-year-old boy. He is a voracious reader with passion for maths and science. Harnessing the power of Vedic mathematics, he looks for ways to make maths more interesting. He is a blend of Indian traditions and modern activities. While he knows classical languages like Tamil and Sanskrit, he also has taste for English. Recognized as an all-rounder, he also has interest in chanting slokas and playing mridangam. With his recently acquired hobby being programming, he has also developed apps and games. To feed his curiosity, he has taken up quizzing and has emerged as a zonal champion. To keep his mind and body fit, he has taken up chess and yoga to improve the body and mind. This boy is none other than myself. Yours sincerely, M. Prateek.
Thank you, Pratik. It's so nice to see how you are a blend of our beautiful Indian culture and the evolving modern world. Thank you for that video. Up next, we have our third candidate, Pranav Gautam from PSBB Senior Secondary School, T Nagar, Chennai.
Well, almost there. This is Pranav Gautam from Class 8 of PSBB Chennai signing into the finals of communication skills. Behind this chirpy face is a tall boy with taller ambitions with varied interests ranging from quizzing to debating. His favorite personalities range from PM Modi to MS Dhoni. I love learning about Indian history and current affairs. I also love reading books ranging from Harry Potter to Sapiens. I can solve the Rubik's Cube in 17 seconds and recite 14 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. I do yoga to keep fit. From a young age, I've been interested in science and physics and I've always had an inquisitive mind. In 2020, I picked up coding, German and playing the keyboard and I've been really interested in doing that. I'm also topper across all subjects in my school. I like to face new challenges. Whenever something doesn't go my way, I sit down to find the gaps in my performance. Thank you. Well,
Thank you, Pranav. 17 seconds to solve a Rubik's Cube? My God, even 17 hours is not enough for me. Thank you. Up next, we have our candidate number 4, Vedant Santosh Sinde from Presidency School, RT Nagar, Bangalore.
Hi, I am Vedant Santosh Shinde, a student studying in grade 8 at Presidency School, RT Nagar. I hail from the Garden City of India, the Silicon Valley of India, Bengaluru. I am a voracious reader and love reading a variety of books, all of which cater to my wide tastes. Quoting Margaret Atwood, a word after a word after a word is power. I am a keen quizzer as well and am always on the lookout for things happening around me. I am here today because of one of the biggest flaws in the world I see, which is the lack of effective communication. Effective communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity, for the art of communication is the language of leadership. Can you imagine a world where the ideas that truly matter are not suppressed underneath the hunt for the right words that will make an impact? Well, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Vedant, for your video. It's impressive to see that you're here to bring out the importance of an issue. Up next, we have our candidate number 5, Jeff Kevin Arun from Manchester International School, Coimbatore.
Hello everyone, I'm Jeff Kevin, a grade 9 student from Manchester International School, Coimbatore. I'm really interested in learning new things in a wide variety of topics. I'm especially interested in science. The inventions, discoveries, and explorations in science really amaze me. Other than my academic pursuits, I really like to communicate and collaborate with people around the globe. This expands my perspectives on different topics. I'm also really interested in music. My goal is to complete grade 8 in electronic keyboard by this year. I'm also really conscious about the environment. I've participated in many events related to this in India as well as abroad. In the future, I would like to gain expertise in an area of science and thereby contributing in making this world a better place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your video. I hope you do a lot of collaborations and become famous for your talent in piano. Up next, we have Naina Bagchi from Sun City School, Gurgaon.
Hi, my name is Naina. I'm currently a student of ninth grade at Sansari School. So, my first love is language. I have been writing as far back as I can remember, and I actually published a book a few years ago. I have been told that I am empathetic, compassionate, and a very good listener, all of which are qualities I really take pride in. And lastly, I like to conclude by tackling one more question: what is the meaning of life? My favorite author, Douglas Adams, would say it's the number 42. I have a slightly different stance. I believe that our relentless pursuit of meaning is meaningful enough in itself. In a way, we're all lost in a mercilessly chaotic universe. We find purpose in things like religion, faith, and identity, but most importantly, we find it in each other. Which is why I believe so strongly in the values of human connection and communication. Thank you.
Congratulations on publishing a book, Naina. I love how confident you are. Great job. I must say, all the introductions were quite innovative. Wonderfully done, participants. Let's move on to part two, roundtable group discussion. You will have 10 minutes for this round. The topic will be revealed now, and here it is. Lessons for the world from the COVID-19 pandemic. Before you start your roundtable group discussion, I just want you to know that this would be conducted just as it would have been conducted face to face. I will not call on you or ask you to speak. You have to listen to what the other participants have to say, and you have to take the initiative to contribute to the discussion. And you can start your discussion now. You have 10 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. So, everyone, I would like to say one major point about this, and it's a major lesson that all of us would have probably learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. So, it's been a year now, as it actually started previous December in China, Wuhan, and the lockdown was officially declared in India by March. So, we've all been going to online school from then. So, because it's been so long, we might have learned a lot of things. One of them is the world is constantly changing. For example, before the pandemic, we were all going to school and we could all interact with everyone. But now we are all in online classes. Even this meeting is actually held online when the previous year's Intelligim was actually a physical program. So, what I would like to specifically mention is the world is really constantly changing, and the only way to actually survive and be an important part of it is to be able to adapt as the world also changes.
I'm M. Pratik and I want to talk. So I feel that the coronavirus has both its advantages and disadvantages. Everything has its own pros and cons. We must keep aside the cons and we must see the pros of coronavirus. We've seen how much the coronavirus has helped the environment. We've even seen footage of animals on roads in the early stages of the lockdown. So the environment has been flourishing once we stopped going outside due to the lockdown. The COVID has helped the world. Apart from that, we're stuck at home. We must embrace that fact and look for new things to learn. Learning is a never ending process. I find that the coronavirus is the perfect opportunity to do this. We had lots of free time, which helped us to learn lots of new skills. I feel that the coronavirus is a blessing in disguise. Thank you.
I'm Siddharth Kumar Gopal, and I disagree with my worthy opponent when he said that it was a blessing in disguise, because we saw many people suffering and many lives were lost. Although the anthropos, the pause of human development, was there and nature recovered, I do not fully believe that it is a blessing in disguise. However, the world quickly grew up and developed global collaboration and developed a vaccine that would average the average time to create a vaccine is 10 years. But with the help of global collaboration, and when the world realized that there is the urgency of creating a vaccine, we did it within 10 months. Another lesson was that within every problem, there is a seed of opportunity. And it has also shown a very important problem, that is that the whole of India and the whole of the world need to have financial literacy. The principles of saving for a rainy day and having an emergency fund would have helped laborers who suffered during the pandemic because they could not manage their money properly in the earlier days. Also, digital literacy is also very important because right now there is no option other than to study digitally, and in the rural areas where there is very less internet density, 25% as compared to the urban density of 90%. But still, if we are able to offer the internet access, they will be first time internet users and will not have enough precautions against the pitfalls of the internet. And thus I believe that digital literacy is very important. Also, another fact that I would like to bring is that humans have interfered too much with the environment. One of the suspectable middle animal that is suspected to have given us the coronavirus is the pangolin, which is the most trafficked animal in the world. And thus, I would like to say that we should minimize our interaction with nature to prevent such zoonotic diseases from affecting humanity later on.
That was very insightful. Sorry. Going off of your very first point, I think we can all serve to learn a lesson of privilege in this pandemic. The fact that we are all on this call means that we all have some semblance of financial stability and security in the pandemic. Something that if you watch the news, you know that it hasn't been afforded to a lot of people. So I think it's really important to be able to use our privilege for good in this pandemic.
I would like to speak to. This is Pranav. I definitely agree with the fact that global collaboration was the key to the success of finding out the vaccine. But also an add-on point to that if we all hadn't seen the danger that the COVID-19 virus posed, we would not have been at this state. We would have all been in a state of chaos. Just because of the fact that we were able to find out and we all understood the fact that this was a dangerous thing. We all straight away went into our houses, and then probably not everybody, but we all understood the danger. And then the fact that we all were able to quickly adapt to this is really important, as well as the fact that many people took it negatively, but many people took it positively. For example, I saw a video of people in Italy taking a balcony concert, socially distanced. And this is basically celebration even in times of chaos. And this is what we need. We need happiness to always prevail. We need joyfulness to always prevail. We need positivity to prevail, to remain unpositive in this case.
First one was we as humans are extremely adaptive, and so this COVID-19 pandemic has actually taught us that humans are going to be a race that are going to last on this planet for a very long time. Whether there's any kind of catastrophe that might try to wipe us out, but it is highly unlikely that we will not survive it, because the chances of us surviving are high because our population is high and people are able to work with each other. During this COVID-19 pandemic, political borders and national borders seemed to disappear. Every country was out looking for vaccines, and every country had promised that they would pass on once they got it right. So this tells us that people did not think that when will my country develop a vaccine, but when will humanity develop a vaccine. Second, we have actually been brought closer to nature. And I think that this was an action of Mother Nature, because ultimately we were all getting distant from nature and staying in these murky, dusty and polluted cities. People actually left cities and they started going back to their villages and towns. So I'm not saying that leaving cities was a good thing, but they went back to nature, because there's not much of habitat or wildlife you can find back in the cities, but near villages you can find quite a lot of wildlife. Now there is some dangerous wildlife like leopards and so on near villages. There is one near my village, in fact. So yeah, but still, you are always on the lookout, and just brought us a bit closer to nature. And the third thing I realized was humanity is still alive. Humanity still exists within each and every one of us, and humanity, the concept of humanity, the concept of being good to others, it will flourish each and every time there is some pandemic or there is some catastrophe, because ultimately these seeds are sown, even if they're sown deep within us, but when the time comes, they will flourish. And we will not flounder humanity, but it will be used very well. As we saw in the case of many of celebrities, including Sonu Sood, stepping out of their homes during the pandemic and helping stranded laborers get back home. Also, foreigners also came back. A lot of non-residential Indians also helped the nation come back. Like we have Vikas Khanna, who is a chef, and he was from New York. However, he started from New York, staying in New York. He started a campaign back here in India where he started donating food to the people who needed it.
Also, people learn to value their family and also realize that time is the most precious resource. People engaged in long forgotten hobbies like gardening, and they also learn new skills. We also learn that livelihoods are as important as life itself. Many people lost livelihoods, and thus, when we lifted the lockdown, we managed to lead new normal with social distancing and masks.
I would like to add one point, which is about the matter of perspectives. Because now the only way we get to know about the outside world is through either news or media, and in this way, people can also like spread false rumors. Like there may be some rumors even now, and some people believe it, and some people who know the facts will actually know it, and they comment below on saying stating the actual fact and stating what is wrong here, and the reason is posting false media actually misguides a huge group of people, and they may spread it on to their friends and their family, and thus it may spread false rumors, and thus learning to identify the fact from the false rumors is a really important skill currently. For example, a photographer, he took different two different forms of photos. Like he went to a public meeting hall where people are actually socially distanced, and he used two forms of cameras. One is a wide lensed camera, so that he took it from a distance, the photo, and it showed that people are all particularly socially distanced. And then he took another camera, a DSLR, and he used the zoom function. Using the zoom function, and that also from a distance, it seemed that the people are actually close by and they were not actually following.
10 minutes is over for the group discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, participants. Very insightful comments from you young participants here. After that thought-provoking session, we move on to part 3. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Each participant will be shown 3 unconnected pictures. Using these, you have to create a story. We will start by showing you one picture in each slide and then show you one slide with all the 3 pictures. After this, you will get 1 minute to think and up to 3 minutes to tell your story. When you have 1 minute left, I will let you know so that you can start winding up your story. Any questions? Okay, wonderful. Let's begin. Siddharth Kumar, here are your pictures. Your 1 minute to think starts now. You have 30 seconds left. Your 1 minute is up. You can start your story now.
Ramu was a very rich person who lived with his parents in a village. It was Christmas time, and Ramu had decorated the tree and put on all the decorations on the tree and had decided that he would take a laptop as a gift from his father. He had told his father the day before. Father, I want a laptop. Can we buy one? And his father had said to Ramu, Sure, Ramu, we can go to the store in the city and buy a nice laptop for you. Ramu was very happy. He had always wanted a laptop, and now, since he was third standard, his father had said that he had earlier used his father's laptop for the digital classes, and now he was getting his own laptops. He was overjoyed. He lived near a coastal town, and there was a lighthouse. And one day, and he always loved to see the lighthouse and the sea around it, and all the ships coming in and going. Today was another day where he decided to visit the lighthouse. He went up the stairs of the lighthouse, and there was a strong wind there. It was evening, but when he looked around the lighthouse, he saw a scene about where there were a lot of huts and children playing in mud, rather than the house in which he stayed, which had a huge garden in front and a lot of amenities. And then he went down and decided to sleep. But when the clock struck 12, he woke up, and then he thought about Santa Claus, and then about the image that he had saw in the lighthouse, with all the poor people. And then he went and told to his father, Father, can we use the money that we decided to buy the laptop to buy some mobile phones to give to all the poor people here so that they also can have a better life and learn digitally? His
You
father
have
was
2
thrilled.
minutes left, Siddharth.
His father was thrilled that his son had such good values, and the next morning they went and bought 2 dozens of phones and distributed them to the local children. Thus, the story ended in a happy note, with Ramu being happy that he had done a good deed, and the children in the village happy that they had a chance at a better life and that now they could do digital learning without their parents' devices. Thank you.
Great job, Siddharth. I love how you taught us a value through your story. That was amazing. Up next, we have Pratik. Pratik, here are your pictures. Your 1 minute starts now. You have 30 seconds left. Pratik, your time is up. You can start your story now.
Once upon a time in ancient Persia, there was a small boy. He did odd jobs for a living. One day he found a piece of wood which was broken from a tree in the middle of the desert. So he dragged it all the way to a shop where he could get some money for it. Since he was a very small boy, instead of money, the shopkeeper gave him a small toy. The boy refused it. I don't want this, the boy said, because it looked evil. But then the shopkeeper insisted, and then he had it. So as he was walking, he found some people whispering, and he found that they weren't up to any good. So he saw that they were making small toys, and those toys were being used to exploit people. They had trackers in them which could track where people were and used it to loot money. They did not have very good intentions. They weren't like Robin Hood. they didn't give the money to the poor. They took it for themselves. And he found that his toy looked exactly the same. So he delicately opened the toy and ensured that his one was one in a million. His was the only toy which did not have any such thing. The manufacturers had forgotten to keep the chip inside his toy. So he decided to save his friend who also happened to have the toy. He exchanged that his friend was a son of a rich merchant. He exchanged the toy with his friend and then he kept it in the middle of the desert where he found the twig. He also asked the policemen to arrive at the scene where he had found the twig. But he told them to come there silently so that the exploiters would not know. And then, as he was a rich merchant's son,
You have 1 minute left.
the thieves, in hope of lots of money, came to the exact place. The police caught them red-handed and stopped the whole business. Therefore, the boy was very grateful to the shopkeeper who had given him the toy. The toy had helped out so many people from being exploited from a dangerous bunch of criminals. Thank you.
Great imagination, Pratik. I loved how that toy helped so many people. Now we have Pranav Gautam. Here are your pictures, Pranav. Your 1 minute
The
start.
third picture isn't clear. Can you just zoom it in? Okay.
You have 30 seconds to go. Your 1 minute is up and you can start your story now.
Raj had everything in the world he wanted. The newest pair of shoes? Yes. The latest iPhone? Yes. The fanciest of dinners? Without a question. He especially loved the iPhone his parents had gifted him. Being the son of a rich man definitely had its perks, he thought. He loved using the iPhone wherever he went. Whether he was going on a walk, whether he was at his friend's house, or even at the dining table. Whenever he was at the dining table, he would quickly scroll through all the news. But one day, while scrolling through the news on his phone, he dropped it. He was so shocked as all the glass from the display of the phone had broken. It was in shards. He didn't know what to do. He quickly ran over to the phone seller's shop. While running there, he saw some people without any shoes, without their clothes in tatters, without having anything in the world, just trying to earn a meal. Raj was thoughtful. He didn't know what to think of what could happen. But he realized that he, being the son of a rich person, definitely had its perks. But there were so many less fortunate people in the world.
even though he still got his iPhone fixed. The next time his father asked him what he wanted, he just asked his father to give that whatever money he had decided to give to his son to anybody who was in need, to any charity which his father felt like giving it to. Because now Raj was a changed boy. He didn't want money only for himself. He didn't want it for the family. He wanted it so that he could do good to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav, for that great story. Raj is an ideal role model to all of us. Up next, we have Vedant Santosh Shinde. Here are your pictures, Vedant. Your 1 minute starts now. You have 30 seconds left. Your time is up, Vedant. You can start your story now.
Roy was just like another employee, working at home all day and sleeping all night since he was exhausted by the day's end. He kept working hard, hoping that he would get to keep his job. Suddenly, one day, news came and he was shocked to find out that offices were reopening. However, they would be open only to a small fraction, and while the rest of the employees stayed at home and worked. One day he was working, and at that time he received a call which told him that there was a meeting at his office and he had to leave urgently and reach there. Roy immediately abandoned his PC and started off. He traveled and reached there just in time for the meeting. He attended the meeting. During the meeting, he found out that he had just been fired. Devastated, he decided to leave for home. Roy usually took a cab to come back home and to go for office. But this time, since he had lost his job, he decided to save money and decided to travel through a local bus instead. While sitting in the bus, the woman next to him suddenly got up and left as it was her stop. When he looked at her seat, there was a small package that was covered in a cloth. He opened the package only to find a shining gem inside. Oh, the gem looked so shiny and so pretty. He admired this gem and decided to keep it. He kept it in his pocket and just kept thinking about the gem. He started wondering that if he put it up in an auction, how much would he earn? And then, thinking about this, he started dreaming and dreaming and dreaming, and he kept thinking that, oh, now what can I do with this gem? Finally, he decided that since he had lost his job, he would immediately sell the gem and start his own business so that he would be comfortable in life. So he pocketed the gem and went away happily. Never did he spare a second's thought to think that perhaps he should have returned it to the old lady who left it there by mistake. The next day, he happily hopped about to the shop and he asked them that how much it was worth. They informed him that it was not worth a penny because it was a clever fake. At that time, Roy realized that this was a big mistake. He blamed the old woman initially because she gave him a wrong gem. But then he realized that it was not his gem to keep. And then he also felt bad that perhaps if he would have given it back to her, he would have done something good and his conscience wouldn't have been guilty. This guilty feeling kept nagging at him and he kept wondering what if he had returned. Sadly, he realized the value of honesty and decided that the next time he found something, he would return it to ensure that even if it was valuable, he would ensure that he returned it so that he would stay happy and guilt free all his life. Thank you.
Thank you, Vedant. That was a wonderful story on honesty. Up next, we have Jeff Kevin Arun. Here are your pictures, Jeff. And your 1 minute starts now. Your 1 minute is over. And you can start your story now.
Akash was a man, and his job was to be an environmentalist. He was really interested in ecology and science, and he also got a promotion recently. Thus, he decided to move to Europe. He went to Europe because there were lots of options for being an environmentalist there. He started working on campaigns and he started gaining lots of people supporting his views. One day, he decided to start a campaign on the beach. It was a campaign for cleaning all the waste in the beach, and it was because that beach had a lot of tourists coming there. He asked the government for permission to close the beach for a week, and that him and his team would clean the beach within a week. The government granted him permission, and they warned him that it was a really large beach. So, doing it in 1 week would be a very hard struggle. Akash said that he and his team could manage because they had already assessed the situation. The government congratulated him for his initiative, and they sent him to the beach. On the first day, he and his team were analyzing how much waste were on the beach. There were a few tons of waste scattered all around the 5 kilometers of coastline. They knew it was going to be a hard task, and thus they started gaining volunteers on the first day. They started their work by the second day, and they started cleaning the beach. They had a few trucks, and they could also put the waste inside the truck. And then after that, they did not go to any landfill for putting away the waste. They started doing recycling and reusing certain types of waste because they knew that putting it in a landfill would not change the problem any much. And in the last 5 days, that's what happened, and they finally managed to clear the beach. And Akash and 2 members of his team were going for a final checkup.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah. During this time, Akash found a bottle. Inside the bottle was a message, and in the date, it was written as it was something around 1705, the 17th century. He read, and because of the handwriting, he could know that he had seen this handwriting somewhere. And then he remembered. It was in the diary of his family. It was his great-great-great-grandfather Akshay. He could know because there was his name at the bottom. And this was the message. It read, even then, Akshay had a knowledge about the environment and knew that humans were polluting it, because that's when people started industrializing. And thus he said, to anyone who finds this message, it may be many years, but still, spread this message. Right now, humans, right here, they're all starting to industrialize and make lots of new things. Yes, ma'am.
That was a wonderful story. After you said Europe, now I feel like going there. Up next, we have Naina. Here are your pictures. And your 1 minute starts now. You have 30 seconds left. Your 1 minute is up, Naina. You can start your story now.
All right. When Rashmi awoke, she was in a glass building of sorts. She was disoriented and dizzy and disillusioned. She slowly propped herself up to her feet and looked at the view in front of her. She beheld a bright auburn sky. To the left of her, there was a weird contraption of sorts. Rashmi was confused, to say the least. She had no memory of how she got here, and she was also scared. She'd grown up being bullied, and that had made her naturally defensive. She was immediately on her toes to find a way to get out of the place. Rashmi decided to walk around. She circled the room she was in for a few minutes, but to no avail. Then she started fiddling with the contraption to her left. She saw it had weird looking buttons and dials. She was slightly scared to touch them, but eventually she pressed the red button at the top. Immediately, the glass panels in front of her disappeared, and it seemed like she was enveloped in darkness. She felt like she was falling down a tunnel of sorts. Eventually, the sensation stopped, and Rashmi could feel that the glass contraption had come to a standstill. The door opened, and she walked out. In front of her, she beheld a monstrous creature of sorts that she could only have seen in her worst nightmares. It had glaring blue eyes and skin that looked like it was made of wood. Rashmi was terrified out of her mind. Her first instinct was to run, and so she did run. The only problem was she couldn't see 5 feet in front of her. She was running wildly in all directions, just trying to escape this monstrous cavern of sorts she'd ended up in. As she was running, she had the time to clear her thoughts. She tried desperately to recall anything from her past, but it seemed as though her memory had been wiped out. As Rashmi ran, eventually she crashed into something, and then she circled right back to the glass contraption she was in. Hurriedly, she entered and tried to shut the door of the contraption. Unfortunately, it did not shut. Rashmi looked in front of her. The creature with the glimmering blue eyes was coming closer. Slower and slower and slower, Rashmi felt her terror rising until she woke up, bent over her board of Ludo. Her heart was still racing, but it was just a nightmare. The first thing Rashmi did was thank her stars that she'd never encountered such a creature before.
Your time is done. Thank you for that story. Love the flow of your story. It was really good. I think that session jogged all of our imaginations. Part 4, which is block and tackle. And this round will test your debating capabilities even further. Participants will be invited forward one by one. As they speak, the judges will alternate between the commands block and tackle. You will need to deliver 4 arguments when the judges say tackle and deliver against arguments when the judges say block. You will need to speak for about 3 to 4 minutes. At the end of 4 minutes, we will stop you. The topic was already shared with you and will be shown on your screen while you're talking. Siddharth, your topic was marks and grades do not reflect a student's intelligence.
Yes.
And your time starts now.
Ma'am, is it block or tackle?
Your judges will let you know.
Block.
The year was 1896, and a child studying in Argovian School, Switzerland, brings home the report card of his final exams with a 6 in algebra, physics, and geometry, and a 5 in chemistry, where 6 is the highest possible grade that can be achieved. This, my friends, is the report card of none other than Albert Einstein, a name synonymous with intelligence, and this report card was tweeted by... Well, Albert Einstein might have been a great student, but we cannot forget the example of Thomas Alva Edison, who was a great inventor but did not do well in the traditional schooling system and was expelled from school because he was a poor student. And we of course know the story of the exam on flying, which graded all animals on their... Intelligence can be defined as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Marks and grades are a clear reflection of a student's grasp of the subject. His ability to acquire that knowledge and then apply it in the exam is a testimony that he can reapply them in real life as well. Grades and marks are also a reflection of several essential life skills such as discipline, consistent hard work, and ability to actively listen in class and to apply skills learned in a controlled environment of an exam, and the ability to effectively manage the most critical resource, time. Well, as you already said, the definition of intelligence, I would say that as David Wechsler, the creator of the IQ test, defines intelligence, it is the global capacity of the individual to act purposefully, to think rationally, and to deal effectively with his environment. Intelligence isn't just a matter of being able to recall facts and figures, which is what marks and grades are all about. Intelligence is about combining learned information with life skills and being a rational, competent human being. Intelligence is what helps us celebrate and succeed in life. A well-balanced life and marks and grades are no reflection of that. An intelligent student will also be naturally curious. Thus, regardless of the subject, the student will use his inherent curiosity to learn and assimilate knowledge about the subjects that are taught and achieve. Well, marks and grades obtained within a rigid school system do not reflect a student's intelligence. Several essential aspects of intelligence, such as emotional intelligence, the ability to collaborate with others to achieve a common goal, creative and critical thinking, are not at all reflected in the grades and marks of students. Also, as I said, they will use their interdisciplinary knowledge to correlate the various subjects that are taught in class to effectively apply his critical thinking while answering questions, which then translates to higher grades. Also, several studies have shown that there is a direct correlation between intelligence and grades, and that education and intelligence are mutually reinforcing. An intelligent student achieves higher grades and is more likely to pursue higher education, which further expands his intelligence. For example, there is also interest and ability. A highly intelligent student with a keen interest in pursuing liberal arts, being forced to study about differential equations or the speed of light, will not only find it a torturous exercise, but will also not assimilate anything from it. And this will reflect in his grades. But it is not a reflection of his intelligence. The same goes for a student
Okay, that's time's up. 4 minutes over.
Thank you, Siddharth. I love how you shifted between for and against arguments with so much ease. Up next, we have our second candidate, Pratik. Your topic was single gender schools are more effective than co-ed schools. And your time starts now.
Ma'am, do I start with block or tackle?
Block.
Block. Co-ed schools show the reality. The real world is a mix. Same gender schools shelters children from this reality. In the future, when you grow up, you have to deal with both men and women. This makes you more prepared for the future if you study in co-ed schools. Co-ed schools also make sure that you have friends of both genders, thus making you tackle. Same gender schools help to study because boys and girls learn differently. This can help you to tailor each individual based on their gender so that they can learn more effectively and learn what they want. Learning what they want in the right manner is the key to success.
Block.
Co-ed school, every individual is different. We cannot group that boys are in such a way and girls are in such a way. Therefore, it is extremely essential that we have to tailor lessons to an individual and not to a gender. A gender is not the same as an individual. Abilities. Same gender schools also give you more comfort and you can also make friends more easily. This also makes your school experience better. You also don't get distracted with fights. In co-ed schools, many places where the other gender is better, there the lower gender is suppressed and is boxed into narrow gender stereotypes. Without these stereotypes, they can study in a same gender school and benefit. All the students can benefit. But in student where boys excel, they can raise the standard for girls and help them improve, and vice versa. Same gender schools are extremely important as they help them to be comfortable, and also school is not the only place of interaction. They also go many students who study in same gender schools. Co-ed education is extremely essential to the society as this diversity is extremely important. This boys can also get to know the girls' perspective and the girls can also get to know the boys' perspective. An individual's perspective may differ. Gender is not the same as an individual. Same gender schools also same gender schools help you to go with your gender and go with your flow.
Block.
What? Hello?
Block.
Oh, block. Co-ed education is the best form of education available because it exposes you to the real world. The real world is a mix, and so you too have to be a mix of both to shine in the world. Co-ed education makes sure that you have friends of both genders. Thus, this makes you same gender schools do not shed children from reality. It just makes them more comfortable just for some time. This does not mean they may not excel or shine. This means that they can focus more on academics in more concentrate more. This also helps them to be without distractions because they are more comfortable.
Time is up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pratik, for giving us more insight to this topic. That was a great debate. Up next, we have Pranav Gautam. Your topic was tourism should be banned as it pollutes the environment. And your time starts now.
Block or tackle?
Block.
We humans live such mundane lives in the city, standing at the four walls of our house. We need to get a break from all the hustle and bustle of city lives. And going to natural and tourist spots helps out a lot with our stressed out brains. Tourism gives us the perfect break from our normal routines. It gives us a way to calm down and relax.
Tackle.
When we go sightseeing in a forest, we can move so freely because all the wildlife has already moved away from the place. We have pushed them back so much so that we don't have any hindrances. All in the name of tourism. This causes so much damage to the ecosystem of that forest. Most infrastructure development with regard to a place is dependent on the need of the people who visit the place. With proper analysis of the needs of the visitors and the tourists, necessary facilities that need to be implemented can be identified and built. These generally include transportation, healthcare, recreation, etc. Accessibility to above facilities is the key element of creating the impression among tourists. The satisfaction which the tourist feels is measured by these facilities. This helps boost the tourism of the place and can also help out the locals.
Block.
What if I told you that you and a bunch of friends visiting a place might help it become a metropolis? What am I saying? Having tour... Sorry, one second.
Tackle.
Building better things for society is great, but should it come at the cost of more pollution? Building of hotels, recreation centers, and other places of tourism increases water, air, and soil pollution. And these problems come back to haunt us later, again. And it's a lose-lose for everybody involved, including nature. Well, if we need more tourists just to come here, it's a huge problem for everybody, just because of the fact of the sheer number of people who come. Now?
Block.
Tourism is not just about people coming here and spending. It's about learning new things and accepting new cultures. This helps us grow as a species, and together we fight global challenges. This helps create a mindset that we may all be different with different backgrounds and genders, but we are all part of one common humanity. This helps us not only fight pollution, but all different types of global problems.
Tackle.
More tourism means more travel, and more travel means more vehicles. More vehicles means more harmful gases emitted. More harmful gases emitted means more global warming. So after this huge chain reaction, we see that tourism and travel is one of the main causes of global warming. Many visitors come to the forest wanting to see animals, but they see none, without realizing the fact that they themselves have pushed away the animals from the ecosystem. This can cause the ecosystem to collapse and cause the extinction of many animals.
Block.
Extinction of animals can also be prevented by tourism, as many people realize the importance of saving animals and nature and that they are the wealth of the world. By treating the cure and not the symptoms, we can save many animals from becoming endangered or extinct. Basically, what I said means, instead of doing preservation, which means just maintenance, we're doing conservation, which means changing mindsets and also the numbers of the sea. We haven't treated one of the many diseases that tourism causes. Imagine walking into a historical spot or a forest to find the most beautiful plastic bottle. With more tourists visiting, this pile of plastic keeps accumulating, and the only way to stop this is to stop tourists from coming there in the first place. Plastic, as we all know, is a huge problem, and tourism is one of the main causes of this. So many beaches, and we can actually stop plastic pollution by allowing tourism to continue. Since visitors like to visit clean and neat places, the authorities and the locals will try their best to keep the place clean. In this case, everybody wins. And since tourists also feel good, they'll get a good feedback to the rest of the world. And more people will come. And then it's a win-win for everybody. When you see somebody gasp with the sheer beauty of the Red Fort, you feel a sense of pride. Tourism helps showcase our rich culture and heritage. It also promotes our local arts and crafts, which encourages the maker to work harder and become more famous.
Time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav. That was brilliant. I'm sure it's been a long time since we all traveled. I've forgotten what it feels to be a tourist. Up next, we have Vedant. Your topic was zoos should be banned due to animal cruelty. And your time starts now.
Ma'am, block or tackle?
Block.
Oh. So zoos, as all of us as children love to go to zoos because seeing a real life tiger is always much better than seeing a pictographic tiger. Thus, zoos provide an important educational resource. Also, people from zoos travel to local schools to make presentations and thus educate children about the animals and creatures we share our planet with. And a lot of zoos also partner with community providers, and this helps extend tackle. So, holding any animal in captivity has questionable ethics and also offers an ethical dilemma. Don't you think so? Because animals like orca do poorly when they live in captivity. Normally, an orca can live up to 100 years naturally, but they die at a meager age of 30 whenever they are bred in captivity. This is because of mental depression, which is also a mental depression caused due to lack of freedom and separation from their species.
Block.
Right. Yeah. So zoos they also offer activities that will actually help animals to continue their natural instincts. So a lot of people say that whenever animals are let back out into the wild, what happens is that they are not able to see that animals are able to survive because they have lost their natural instincts that help them to be independent. However, zoos continually offer some live chickens and so on for predators to hunt on so that the natural instincts are kept sharp so that they can be released back into the wild as and when required. Tackle. However, many people say, just now I also said that animal activities help maintain natural instincts, but this is not always the case because hunting a chicken is going to be very different from hunting a deer. A deer will be able to run fast, but will the tiger who lives in a small cage be able to run that fast to catch the deer? That is always a very doubtful situation. Similarly, any animal that is born in captivity loses its instincts over time. Perhaps in a short period, they will be able to regain it. But animals that are born in a zoo are not able to regain the instincts in the first place for them to regain it once they are let out in the wild. So, in short, they lose their instincts, which make them independent. Block. Now, a lot of animals, zoos are actually giving preference to humans over animals. Recently, a 3-year-old child was left unsupervised, went into a cage of a gorilla, and so ultimately to rescue the child, though the gorilla had done no dangerous thing, the zoo had to kill the gorilla in order to rescue the child. So over here, preference is always given to human life over animal life. Why is this? Even they have lives, they are also equals, they also share the planet. Yet, why do we always value our own species more than others? Also, in another case, a lot of zoos are now killing animals because they cannot fund them due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Tackle.
In a lot of situations, the animals are being given excellent treatment in zoos, especially when they are injured or they cannot survive in the wild. So one of the best examples was the Przewalski horse. And so this horse in 1945, there were only 13. Yeah. However, they went and last thing, okay, yes ma'am. So conservation is a goal that isn't always sought. So not everyone is looking after the conservation of these endangered animals. Most of them will prefer that they earn money because this is a very profit-minded world and everyone is looking for their personal gains. Like I said, many zoos are slaughtering animals. Like a polar bear is going to be slaughtered in Germany because they don't have the required funds to serve this animal food. Therefore, a lot of endangered species are being brought back to life in various zoos. We can also see that in many places there are a few of the animals left, but however they continued. In ancient times, you can see that just before Jahangir, thank you.
Thank you, Vedant. That was a very interesting topic. The story where you said the child went to the gorilla's cage was very different. I've never heard that before. Thank you. Up next, we have Jeff Kevin. Your topic was euthanasia is justified. And your time starts now.
Should I start with the block, ma'am?
Tackle.
Okay. Euthanasia is an act to ease suffering. It's an act of deliberately ending a life to ease suffering. A type of euthanasia is voluntary euthanasia. It's directly requested by the patient suffering, that is, the victim, when he or she is still in a state of consciousness and he or she is matured enough to make the decision. That is, they are not mentally impaired or they are also not a child. They do it because they need to be, they are actually suffering right now, and that's either euthanasia might not always be an act to ease suffering. How can a person who's suffering take a clear decision about his life? The family members might definitely have opposing views, and this might result in a problematic scenario. In the case of involuntary euthanasia, it's even worse. Another important point is that modern medical procedures have made euthanasia a painless process. Nobody wants to feel intense pain and suffering. Today, palliative sedatives can be given for someone who's very close to dying, but suffering a lot due to the illness, either physically or psychologically. Palliative sedation is an active form of euthanasia as it is prescribed and distributed by a medical professional. Euthanasia, especially active euthanasia, should not be made legal since it goes against the sanctity of life argument. Sanctity of life is a term used mostly in the Christian/Muslim sense. However, the sanctity of life is observed by every religion on the planet. That's why we call this the religious argument or the sanctity of life argument. Euthanasia is also known as assisting suicide. In certain cases, a person might not be able to ease their suffering themselves, and thus they ask for help. In this case, the help is very much needed because for them, the last few moments of their life is precious. They would not want to suffer and then leave the world. They want to have a sense of dignity of life. And thus, they might be taking an overdose of either sleeping pills, they will have help from a doctor or a family member, and it's usually legal in most cases, except in a few countries where the law states that it's not really right. So assisting suicide should be considered for the right reasons. Euthanasia and assisting suicide, whichever way you call it, shouldn't be allowed for any reason. The slippery slope argument clearly explains why it shouldn't be allowed. For example, as I was saying, assisting suicide, it depends on the reason. Almost every time, a person who needs help will ask for help, even not in the case of euthanasia. But here, they want to get rid of their suffering, and because they may have either a terminal illness which cannot be cured, like most forms of cancer, or they may have some other issue which may be torturing them through pain or psychological or mental illnesses. The pragmatic argument, the methical ethics argument states that legalizing euthanasia would violate one of the most important medical ethics, which in the words of the International Code of Medical Ethics is, a doctor must always... As I was saying about the pragmatic argument, it states that many of the practices used in end-of-life care are essentially a type of euthanasia and they are already legalized. For example, the DNAR, do not attempt resuscitation, where a person has requested that they do not receive treatment if their heart stops beating or their lungs stop breathing. Then they will be removed from the ventilator. That's because it's due to their own choice.
Time up. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Jeff. You debated with so much ease, and it seems like you know this topic thoroughly. Excellent. Our final candidate for the senior round is Naina. Your topic was the death penalty is sometimes the only appropriate punishment. Your time starts now, Naina.
Clock.
Okay, so I believe that the death penalty is never an appropriate punishment. It is, simply put, a violation of human rights. There's a ubiquitous Mahatma Gandhi quote that I think is pertinent to the situation, and it goes, "An eye for an eye makes the world blind." The truth is, the justice system was created to protect our rights. But there are instances where it selectively withdraws these rights, where it is deemed justified. This is a harmful ideology that's actually prevalent in fascist circles. So I believe that the death penalty is sometimes the only appropriate punishment. Crime begets punishment. The punishment must be in proportion to the crime. Ergo, if you take a life, you must give yours in return. It is how an equilibrium is sustained. There's also another pertinent use of the death penalty, and that is to act as a deterrent to crime. Okay, so as I was saying before, the justice system selectively withdraws a human right in situations where it is deemed justified. This is purely unethical. Okay, so I'd like to cite an example for this, the Nirbhaya rape case in which some of the accused were eventually hanged. In this case, it was absolutely crucial that the rapist got a death penalty because it was necessary to set a public precedent and make an example of rapists. This is a good example of how essential the death penalty is to curbing crime. It's a sad reality that there do exist some people who are absolutely beyond redemption. Okay, so evil is taught. No one is born knowing to do bad things, and just as it is learned, it can be unlearned. Everyone has a right to life, and no one is beyond redemption. These principles are infallible. It is on their basis that we have built a democratic world. Yet, at times, we do not respect them at all. Okay, so the idea of widespread criminal redemption is simply too idealistic. It is true that evil is taught, but it is also true that it is sometimes perpetuated by systems that are incredibly deeply ingrained in our societal fabric. So if evil leads someone to commit a crime so heinous it is seen as worthy of execution, chances are the situation is too far gone. Consider the case of adult criminals with several human rights. Okay, so one thing I do believe is that a more productive alternative to the death penalty would be criminal rehabilitation, which is, as of now, a severely underdeveloped stratum, but one that could actually end up doing more good for society. There's also an argument to be made that life imprisonment is actually a more devastating sentence than the death penalty because it leaves the convicted criminal to rot in jail while not facilitating needless loss of life. And this is not factoring into account. Apple? Okay. So the truth is, so if I can continue my point from before, there are people who are beyond redemption. Consider the case of adult criminals with several human rights abuses under their belt. Would you say people like Hitler or Bin Laden deserved anything but death? The truth is, this is a nuanced situation, and on the surface, it does seem like a violation of human rights. But we live in a complex society, and complex situations require complex solutions, which is why the death penalty is sometimes the only necessary alternative. There's often an argument made against the death penalty that cites false accusations. One of the detriments of the death penalty is the countless false accusations and false executions that take place under the death penalty. Widespread criminal rehabilitation is at worst a
Your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naina. That was such an interesting topic. And for a few minutes, I felt like I was listening to a lawyer or a criminologist. That was amazing.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. So, can we have thank you. So, Siddharth, what do you think? What's your opinion? Do marks and grades really reflect a student's intelligence?
Well, it depends. There are many things that are reflected in marks and grades, and some things that are not. For example, collaboration, critical thinking, these are some of the things that are not reflected in grades and marks. But it seems that the society has accepted that grades and marks seem a symbol of intelligence. Because
I want to know what you think. What do you think?
Well, I think that it reflects definitely some certain values like hard work, diligence, and these days mostly exams have application based questions which also make us think critically. But it does not Yes.
Do you think your marks and grades reflect your intelligence?
Sure. Yes, I definitely think that my marks and grades reflect my intelligence.
Okay, great. Thank you. We can move on to the next. Pratik?
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
do you go to a same gender school?
No, ma'am. Co-ed, ma'am.
Co-ed. Have you ever wished that you could attend a same gender school?
No, ma'am.
Never.
I don't think it's a big difference because I concentrate only on my academics and whoever is my friends, I don't care. So I do care, but not to the extent I value my academics.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can we move on to the next? Pranav? Yeah. We can move on to the next candidate. Thank you. Pranav, I think. Yeah. So, Pranav, what do you think about this? Do you think tourism should be banned?
Definitely not. Like I think I forgot to mention it in my while I was speaking, but it like in places where nature is abound and already it's already in danger, that we should restrict it, not totally ban it. That also we should restrict it, but like in historical spots, wherever there is something more to learn, that it should definitely not be banned because. Like history textbooks, you learn something, and then when you go see that, you feel okay. This actually happened. This is something which has an impact on my life today.
So, which is the place you want to visit?
A lots of places actually. I want to visit. I definitely somewhere in the Egyptian civilization, Egypt specifically, and then and US, New York and all those places, because all of that are not only cultural but also historical, ecological, everything mixed together in a very nice combination. So those two places.
Thank you,
India
Pranav.
as well. I would like to mention India as well. Totally.
Okay. Yes. Can we move on to the next? Vedant?
Yes, ma'am.
So, are you an animal lover?
Oh, yes, very much.
Okay. So, do you think zoos are the way for are good? As an animal lover, do you think zoos are something to be encouraged, or do you think you view them as a cruelty, animal cruelty?
I do not encourage this at all because, after all, their freedom is also an important thing. And I always imagine myself being in a cage and trying to entertain people because I don't think anyone likes to see a sleeping lion or a moody lion who's going to go sit behind a rock and he's going to say, I'm not going to show you myself. But rather, I would always feel that if they were out in the open, like there's a safari in Johannesburg, where they trap you in a cage and they put you out in the open, where the tigers, leopards, they are sightseeing you. So they will climb on your cage and so on. So I think that is a much better experience.
What have you been to many zoos?
Not many, but Bannerghatta and Mysore, the nearby ones I have been. And a few things I realized is that the enclosures are big, but it's definitely not as big as a forest. And so it does make a very big difference.
Okay. Thank you, Vedant.
Thank you. Good day.
So, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your personal view on this topic? I know it's a very heavy topic. You've told us pros, cons, everything, but what is your personal view?
So according to me, it really depends on the situation. For example, we can take two very similar cases, but it's a person of a different age. For example, one of them is an elderly man who's around 60, and another is a child who's less than 7 years old. Both of them have been diagnosed with a similar type of pneumonia, and the doctors know that they will have a chance to recover, but it's kind of very rare. So both of them will have to go to treatment. But the elderly man, seeing that he has no mental illness, he can actually decide whether he wants to stay, because he knows that it's very rare for him to recover, or he'll have to spend a lot of time in hospitalization. And he also doesn't want to actually burden his family with his expenses, knowing that his chance of recovery is also pretty minimal. But still, his sons and daughters encourage him to actually go to the hospitalization because they want to be with him longer. and thus he accepts, because here it's like a overall decision, not just a single man's decision.
Do you think this is something that, if at all it is done, should be done from not just the patient but maybe a couple of the caretakers, or do you think it's a patient's individual decision?
I think that will be opinions from the patient's relatives as well as the doctors, because the doctors will be the people who know like the most about the condition. The patient will be knowing how he feels and everything, and his relatives will be knowing what will happen if he's there or not. So they will know the consequences if something wrong happens. So it should be three sides. Everyone should input their choices.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, ma'am.
Naina next. So Naina, what punishments, like what situations do you think the death penalty might be the most and the only appropriate punishment?
I think that the death penalty should be employed only in exceptional cases, like say someone who's committed several human rights abuses, like a terrorist or maybe a fascist dictator. But for civilians, I don't think the death penalty should be employed because most civilians do have scope for redemption.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Shreya, you can continue.
Okay. That was quite spectacular. Please put your hands together for our wonderful participants. Congratulations to all our finalists. The results for the competition and the prize distribution will be on the 26th of January. But before we wind up, I request our judges to share their thoughts about our...
Thank you all. You did a fantastic job. So I'd like to start with a big round of applause. All of you need to clap for yourselves. I don't see all of you clapping. Okay, great. Because I know that you keep hearing that it's important to take part and winning isn't important. And I know all of you want to win, but I'm sure that this particular journey from the round one till today's final has been exciting, and I'm sure you've learned a lot just by participating. That's what they mean when they say participating is important and not winning. Having said that, I'm sure you're all keen to know the winners, but what we thought we'd do now is just take you through some of the things that you did really well and some of the things that maybe you could work on, so that for future competitions or anything, any other events that you take part in the future, you have these points to keep in mind, right? So all of us have kind of shared our thoughts, but each of us will be talking about two of you all and giving you some points that you should continue doing, as well as some things that you might want to improve. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Jeff. Jeff, hi. Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yes.
So I thought that you took a lot of initiative. Like in the GD, you were the one who kicked off the GD. So I thought that was good. It was showed a lot of confidence and leadership. So that is really good. Keep that going. In general, your vocabulary is good, right? You use some really good words, things like slippery slope, pragmatic. You use these words in the right way. A lot of people use good words, but they use it in an incorrect manner. You've used good words and you've used it well. In general, I think you had some great points. Throughout, for all your rounds, you had good, solid content points that you put across. And I think that shows that you've obviously done a lot of research and you've done a lot of preparation. So keep that up. Two things that you may want to work on for the future is, you do use a fair amount of fillers. You use like a lot. It seems to be a word that you can probably listen to this when the finals happens. You can listen to yourself and you'll see that you use like pretty often. The other thing that you do is, when you move from one part, one idea to the next, you generally use and or thus, and you use it repeatedly. So what you can do for both these instances would be to listen to yourself and identify where you are and in what instances you are using both the fillers as well as things like and thus, and you can see better ways to bridge that gap. So with fillers, I think it's just about being conscious that you're using it. But for connectors like and thus, there are lots of options you can use. So if you actually do a bit of research to see words, connecting words that you can use instead, I think that would make your speech a lot, whatever you, not speech, but whatever you speak, a lot more coherent. The flow will be much better.
Okay, ma'am. I'll do it surely.
Okay, and but overall, you did a fabulous job. So congratulations, Nena. Hi, Nena.
Evening, ma'am.
So your vocabulary throughout was spectacular. You used words like ubiquitous, auburn, and pertinent, and these are words that generally people don't use in the, especially words like auburn. I've hardly, other than books, I've hardly heard people using it appropriately. You use these words really well, and your tone of voice and your diction in general is very impressive. So the way you pronounce your words, the way your sentences flow, all of it is very, very good. What I would think for the future you could probably work on is to increase your audience connect. Right? There is a little bit of a barrier. I think it's also because your own language is so good that there is a kind of there'll be a natural disconnect between you and an average audience. So I think you need to think about things like humor, some personal anecdotes, to basically showing some emotion. Because right now you come across as a very calm, composed person with all your points in order. But while that's great, you miss out on that connect with your audience, right? So try to work on that. And initially, you may have to put in effort. I'm not saying you have to fake it, but things like humor and all, you may have to actually script it in. But over a period of time, it will come more naturally. So I think that's something you should work on. But otherwise, keep up the fabulous vocab that you use and the diction and all that. Keep it going. Great work on that.
Hi everyone, good evening. Like Professor Jaja mentioned that you all of you did wonderfully in this round. It was so nice to listen to all your thoughts on your various topics. I today will be concentrating. I'll be talking about Pranav first. Pranav, hi.
Hello, ma'am.
So the first thing that I want to tell you is your confidence and your pacing was amazing, was wonderful. That was something that I kept noticing throughout the rounds. You paced yourself well. You're very confident. You don't talk too fast. You don't talk too slowly. It was very well done. Your vocabulary, your diction, your pronunciation was all spot on. I really had no complaints about those two. And keep up the good work because your demeanor, the way you carried yourself, the way you delivered, your delivery was also wonderful. The one thing that I did notice was you were kind of caught unawares during the picture round. So that is where I would say focus a little bit on that. Practice your on the spot things that you need to do, maybe the fear of being caught unawares kind of was there in the back of your mind. After seeing the pictures, what do I do now? What's the next one? Is it right? So it's okay. It's okay because it is after all and off the cuff. You do have to. It's an on the spot thing you have to make up. So avoid being conscious of being caught unawares. It's okay. So that's one thing, and you can maybe try practicing with these things. Have someone come up with a topic and just talk about it, and that will kind of give you, or even practice in front of a mirror, so you'll know what your tells are too. So you won't be caught unawares, right? So that's it. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Vedant. Hi, Vedant.
Good evening, ma'am.
So you have amazing confidence, great confidence. I noticed throughout. You did a very good job about presenting your points. You had a lot to tell. I love the way you gave a lot of examples. The way you felt spoke so passionately about so many things. The zoos, they really stood out. The fact that you feel strongly about so many things and that you're unafraid of actually talking about them is it's very commendable. So keep up the great work. It was amazing. It was very nice. It was very well put. But the one thing I have to tell you is it would have been great if you were able to pace yourself a little more, because I know we are very conscious of the time. You know, you can feel the stop clock and that kind of thing. So it's pace yourself. That's one thing, you could maybe try practicing a bit and, by pacing yourself. Pause. It's all right. Because sometimes, sentences can run into each other and you might be too fast. So kind of slow down. You can pace yourself. That's great. Another thing is, in certain places, it would be good if you could watch your pronunciation. Certain places like catastrophe, devastated. There are certain words that I noticed. You might want to watch your pronunciation. A great way to work on this is you can go to a good dictionary website. You can click on the word. You can learn the pronunciation. Um, we all watch TV shows and listen to music, and that's one way to learn pronunciation. But if you have a specific word for which you don't know or you're not sure, just go click every respected dictionary like Oxford and Cambridge dictionaries have an audio component, so you can listen to the correct pronunciation. So watch out for that because sometimes I also notice that the pronunciation sometimes slips when you're rushing. So when you're pacing yourself, everything kind of gets. But apart from that, amazing. You did a very good job. All the best.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. It was a pleasure meeting all of you and listening to all your thoughts. I really enjoyed myself. So I have some feedback for Siddharth. Hi Siddharth.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi. So one thing which I really thought you used really well was your vocabulary. So you have a range of vocabulary which is very well used today. You had even phrases like saving for a rainy day. And you used this even if it was impromptu topics. You did them. You used them really well. So I would say whatever you are doing to improve your vocab or be yourself with new words, keep at it. It's really working. And the story, I liked how you connected the three pictures really well and also had a moral around the story. I think it was done well. So I would say that if there's one thing that you could improve, it's about pronunciation. So there were certain words that were mispronounced, mostly words with the sounds per and bur. So that is something you can work on. What you can do is watch more English movies, try to repeat the dialogues after them and check for pronunciation. That is something you can do. And I think ma'am gave a tip before what you can do for pronunciation. So do.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you for the feedback. I'll try to incorporate it.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. Next, it's Prateek. Hi, Prateek.
Hi, ma'am.
So, Prateek, I'm really confident, and I like how you put forth your points with a lot of clarity, and it was very calm. Your rate of speech was very, it was right, neither fast, neither slow. It was done very well. One thing that I think you can work on is a bit of voice modulation with respect to how you can express through your voice. So there are certain cases where you increase your pitch a little more louder, or have a bit of pitch of modeling where you are expressing through your voice. Something you can use to connect with and not have a flat tone.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ma'am. I'll definitely improve.
And the other thing also that I felt is you can improve your vocabulary. You can use more, you can show some variety in the words that you're using. So try to read, try to operate the habit of reading books. Some favorite shows of yours in English.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much, and wish you all the best for the announcement of the winners and the prize distribution.
Thus, we come to the end of the finale of Communication Skills category Senior Level Competition, brought to you by TCS Ion in partnership with STEP from the Hindu Group. We look forward to seeing you all again for the award ceremony, and we wish you all the best. Thank you, everyone.